The Whispers Inn. The walls in the quaint town of Eldridge, nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, stood an old Victorian house. It had been abandoned for decades, its once grand facade now a crumbling relic. Despite its airy appearance, the house drew the interest of Jane and Mark, a young couple eager to restore it to its former glory. The first night they moved in, they were awakened by whispers. At first, they thought it was the wind slipping through the cracked windows, but the whispers seemed to form words. "Get out." They heard faintly, but dismissed it as their imagination. As days turned into weeks, the whispers grew louder and more distinct. Jane could hear them during the day, too. Always the same phrase. "Get out." Mark, initially skeptical, began to hear them as well. They searched the house, hoping to find some logical explanation, but found nothing. One evening, as a storm raged outside, the whispers became a chorus, echoing through the halls. They decided to leave, but the front door wouldn't budge. Panic set in as the whispers turned to screams, and the walls began to shake. In their frantic escape attempt, they stumbled upon a hidden room in the basement. Inside, they found old newspapers detailing the gruesome history of the house. It had belonged to a family who mysteriously vanished in the 1920s. Their bodies never found. Rumors of hauntings had circulated for years, but no one had dared to stay long enough to confirm them. Realizing the whispers were warnings from the lost souls, Jane and Mark desperately tried to find another way out. The whispers guided them to a concealed passage that led to the forest outside. As they made their escape, the house seemed to sigh, as if relieved they had heeded its warning. The next morning, they returned with a team to investigate, but the house had collapsed into a pile of rubble. The spirits, having finally driven the intruders away, rested once more. Jane and Mark never spoke of that night again, but they knew they owed their lives to the whispers in the walls.
The sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows over Blackwood Penitentiary. J. Reed, a seasoned inmate, had meticulously planned a breakout. At midnight, with the help of a bribed guard, he and his accomplices slipped into the old, unused tunnels beneath the prison. The air grew colder as they navigated the labyrinthine passageways, whispers seeming to emanate from the walls. Suddenly, they reached a dead end. Panic set in until Tom touched a wall, revealing it as an illusion. They entered a hidden chamber filled with arcane symbols and an ancient iron door. Beyond, they discovered a forgotten cell block with one occupied cell. Inside sat a figure, the ghost of a former warden, cursed to guard the prison for eternity. The warden's hollow eyes and chilling voice warned, "You shouldn't have come here." Shadows twisted into nightmarish shapes, and one by one, the inmates fell into madness, reliving their worst fears. By morning, the guards found the inmates lifeless in their cells, expressions of terror etched on their faces. The legend of the cursed warden grew, and Blackwood Penitentiary stood, its walls forever haunted by the horrors of that fateful night. The madness of Ravenwood Asylum. The moon cast a pale glow over Ravenwood Asylum, an ominous institution known for housing the most disturbed minds. Within its cold, stone walls, whispers of a breakout plan circulated among the inmates. Evelyn, a former psychologist turned patient after a mental breakdown, had devised an intricate plan to escape. She spent months observing the staff's routines and the asylum's layout. Tonight, everything was set. At midnight, Evelyn and a group of inmates moved silently through the dimly lit corridors. They had bribed Dr. Matthews, a desperate and disgraced doctor, to unlock the security doors. The air was thick with tension and the smell of antiseptic. Navigating through the dark, they reached the abandoned East Wing, where rumors of a haunted past lingered. The temperature dropped, and the sound of faint, tortured cries echoed around them. Still, they pressed on, driven by desperation. Suddenly, they encountered a locked iron door covered in strange, ancient symbols. Evelyn's hands trembled as she picked the lock, and the door creaked open to reveal a long-forgotten cell block. Inside, shadows danced on the walls, and an oppressive sense of dread filled the air. In one of the cells sat a figure in tattered clothing. As they approached, the figure lifted its head, revealing hollow, sunken eyes. It was Dr. Blackwood, the asylum's founder, believed to have died in a fire decades ago. His ghostly voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." The air grew colder, and the shadows morphed into grotesque shapes, reflecting the inmates' deepest fears. One by one, they succumbed to madness, their screams piercing the silence. Evelyn saw visions of her past patients, their faces contorted in agony, blaming her for their suffering. By dawn, the asylum staff discovered the group in the East Wing, catatonic and with expressions of pure terror frozen on their faces. No one could explain what had happened, and the legend of Dr. Blackwood's cursed asylum spread among the remaining patients and staff. Ravenwood Asylum continued to stand, its walls holding the dark secrets of that night and the malevolent presence of Dr. Blackwood forever haunting the halls.
Corruption's price. Price Detective Markham was known as a formidable investigator with a spotless record, until temptation lured him into the depths of corruption. Money from drug dealers flowed freely into his pockets, and his once morally driven investigations turned into carefully orchestrated cover-ups. One stormy night, Markham found himself deep in the heart of the city's underbelly, meeting with his latest informant in a dilapidated warehouse. The air was thick with the stench of decay, the distant rumble of thunder echoed ominously. As Markham collected his payoff, a sudden gunshot shattered the silence. His informant collapsed, blood pooling around him. Panic surged through Markham as he realized he had been set up. With no time to think, he fled into the rain-soaked streets, heart pounding in his chest. Desperate to clear his name and evade capture, Markham turned to his corrupt connections. They led him to an abandoned subway station, rumored to be a hideout for criminals and the destitute. The station, long forgotten, was a labyrinth of dark tunnels and dripping walls, haunted by the echoes of past sins. As Markham navigated the maze, shadows danced eerily around him, and distant whispers echoed through the tunnels. His flashlight flickered, casting fleeting glimpses of graffiti-covered walls and rusted railway tracks. Every corner seemed to hold a new threat, real or imagined. Exhausted and disoriented, Markham stumbled upon an old maintenance room. Inside, he discovered a hidden passage leading deeper underground. The air grew colder, and an oppressive sense of dread settled over him as he descended into the depths. In the heart of the underground labyrinth, Markham encountered a figure cloaked in shadows. It was the ghost of his first victim, a young boy caught in the crossfire of his corrupt dealings. The ghost's eyes bore into Markham's soul, accusing him with silent intensity. Haunted by guilt and fear, Markham tried to flee, but the tunnels seemed to twist and shift around him, trapping him in a nightmarish maze of his own making. As he frantically searched for an escape, visions of his past misdeeds tormented him, each one accusing him of betrayal. By the time the authorities found Markham's lifeless body in the abandoned subway, his face was contorted in terror, and his hands were stained with blood that wasn't his own. The city whispered of a dirty cop's final descent into madness, and the underground labyrinth became a cautionary tale of corruption's price.